Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring Up That. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about the human mind, human development, and I can't wait to hear about all these learnings from one of our experts, Jim Marshall. How are you doing, Mr. Marshall?
Nice to see you, Dave. Great to meet you.
Well, thank you so much. We had actually a nice talk that we sort of grew up in the same, neck of the woods in Brooklyn,
Yes.
New York. So we'll have a great time. Now, I know you've done a bunch of, well, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself first, please?
Okay. Well, the first thing I should say to give context is that I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I crafted a practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena.
Okay, could you explain that a little bit? I mean, human, I
Sure.
guess everything is human phenomena. So could you explain all of that to us a little bit?
Yes. Okay, so Septemics is a philosophical science uh, based on the fact that many phenomena related to humans occur in a sequence of 7 levels.
Hmm.
Literally, the word septemis means of or pertaining to seven. Septemis comprises a collection of scales or sequences which are naturally occurring, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which has 7 levels, each of which is unique. And because the scales are unique to one another, they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, situation, difficulty that any person has regarding people can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one.
So okay, so when something happens, right? So how do you start identifying some of these things? I mean, because I love the conversations, and that's what attracted me to, when we got connected, the fact of like how do we identify things? Because if you don't identify it, I know I've been guilty in previously of not knowing what I don't know. Not even in
That's
my
right.
not in my behavior. I think I'm this great, wonderful guy, and people are like, "Oh, did you realize you do that?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't." Or even just my
Right.
perspective of things. So could you explain how do we identify Dave?
Okay. Okay. So, first of all, I should tell you, as regards septemics, every human is at some level on every scale.
Right.
There are no exceptions. So, if you get the book and open it up and make an effort, you will be able to find yourself on every one of those scales. It's a specific thing. This is very precise, accurate, and specific information. I have an engineering background. This is based on engineering. So once you see what the data is, it's very easy to use it. And I'll give you an analogy. I've been into gardening since I was a little boy. So you might say, "Oh, you're into gardening? Come over and look at my garden." So I go to Dave's house and I see that he has chrysanthemums, irises, begonias, philodendron, roses, tulips, and so forth. Now, the reason I can analyze it that way is that I know a lot about flowers. If you bring some 5-year-old kid into your garden, could be the same day I'm there, he will see and smell exactly what I saw and smelled. But all he can say is, "These are pretty and they smell nice." That's all he knows.
Right. This one's red with this one's purple, whatever the colors might be.
Yeah. So most adults are like that little kid regarding people. They don't know what they're looking at. So because of that, there's this huge problem that we have. The biggest problem on the planet is that people don't understand people. Technologically, we have advanced so far now that in the industrialized world, Most of the things that bothered us before don't bother us. The things that bother us now are not understanding people. That's 95% of the problem. And this book solves that, of course, 35 axes. Now, what I should do now is tell you how I figured this out.
Well, that was my next question is not only that you figured it out, right? The identifying of patterns and things like that, not everybody does, right? It just is because it is. But you searched for those patterns, those abilities to figure it out.
Yes, tell you exactly how it happened. The story really starts when I was accepted into engineering school at the age of 16. And now, of course, I thought at the time that I was going to be engineering physical things like airfoils and motors and electrons and such, as did all the other engineering students. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear to me that I wanted to engineer the human psyche because it is the area of greatest unknown, of greatest mystery, and more importantly, it's the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. Most people don't have a clue about analyzing people, understanding people. So they don't understand what's going on. More than 50% of the people who get married in the United States get divorced. And the reason for that is those two people clearly did not understand one another. If they did, they either would have not gotten married or they would have lived happily ever after. So the divorce rate would be 1%. But they don't have the data. I'm giving you the data in the book. So to make a long story short, I had a long career as a human development engineer, where I worked with hundreds of clients of every description for 40 years. And all of my clients improved. And incidentally, I started to notice that I could predict the outcome of the session. I never told that to anyone until very recently after the book was out. And so, and I didn't mention it, but I made notes. Well, that's what any good engineer would do. When you have phenomena, you note it down. So by 1995, I had simply observed and recorded 32 scales that had varied in length between 3 and 7. So, for instance, what would happen in this session is I would say, okay, I can see that this guy's at this level on the scale. I would not say that to anyone, but I could see it. And that would tell me that he was going to go up to the next level on that scale as a result of our interaction, and he would. And that happened many thousands of times, maybe 9,000 times over a 40-year period. And you have to realize, as soon as I would see it in the session, I would write it down. And then I might go out to maybe Walmart or the bank. And I'd look at two ladies talking, and I would see exactly the same phenomenon from people who I didn't even know. There it is. Now, every time this happened, it verified my hypothesis because nobody knew what I was doing or how I was doing it. So there could not possibly be any kind of a placebo effect. The clients would come to me and say, you know, Jim, I can't get along with women. Can you help me? I say, yes. So we get to work together, and he resolved this thing pretty quickly. But so his insights would be about him. He'd say, you know, I can see now why I didn't get along with women because this, and this, and this, and this. See, and he would be very happy because now he's doing better. He understands it now. But I was seeing this technically as an engineer, that I could see he was at this level on this scale, and he went up to this level on that scale. So by 1995, I had 32 scales. And there's no theory of septemics. This is all based on direct empirical observation, which is something I was very good at because I have a hard science background. So one day I was pondering a difficult client in 1995. And I had this scale that I had been using for decades that I knew was correct. It had 6 levels. And I was trying to find where she was on this scale. And I was having a tough time. I couldn't get an answer. Then I realized, this scale has a 7th level. Well, that had happened to me many times before. How do you think I figured this out? In other words, I had never observed that phenomenon before.
Oh,
And there are specific technical reasons for that that I could explain. But anyway, as soon as I saw what it was, I understood the client perfectly, retroactively and going forward, just like that. And I knew exactly where it fit into the 6 level scale. That was not a question. It was obvious. At that moment, that scale went from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, meaning a whole body of data.
mm.
And all of a sudden, all of this data jumped out at me, woof, right in my face. Now, I should tell you, that is a mathematical manifestation. I took 26 semesters of math and loved every minute of it. So I think in math. So all of these interacting, interlocking, intersecting mathematical phenomena related to the skill presented themselves to me. That is what happens in math. Perfect example. That's how Einstein found E equals mc squared. Everybody in the advanced math and physics community knows how he did it. He gave us the calculations. He did what all mathematicians do, and he got down to the end and he said, E equals mc squared. Whoa! That's a conversion rate for matter into energy, and the conversion rate is c squared. See? That's what math is about. You don't have to measure, you calculate. So, for example, if you tell me that your garden is 4 yards on one side and 3 yards on another side, and you want to build a diagonal, how many stones should I buy to make that path? I can tell you it's 5 yards. I don't have to measure it because this is the Pythagorean theorem. You see?
Right. Right.
That
You just always go
path
back
is 5 yards.
to math and
Right.
figure it out. And you've been able to identify the human sequencing, not sequencing as in DNA, but the behavioral, into a category. So, in the world of sevens, how'd you get? So I guess you when you started punching up the information, that's how you got to 32 levels. Is that what you said? Did I
32 scales initially.
32 scales?
There
Sorry.
are now 35 because I found more as I kept working,
Okay. Yep.
writing the book. But 32, yeah. So now you have to realize here's what happened. I told you about how I spotted this client at a new level on the scale, which explained everything about her, and the scale became a plane. It became a body of data about the scale.
Hmm.
And when I looked at it, and you have to realize, if you know math, the whole point of math is that everything reinforces everything else. It's not like it's 3 this way and 4 this way. If it's 3 this way, it's 3 this way. In other words, math is an interlocking thing. Everything interlocks with everything else in math.
Right. It's a closed process, and
Right,
as long as you follow the process, it's like anything else that works successfully. You follow the process, or you're able to calculate by knowing the right ingredients to put in.
right, right. So I had this thing and I said, whoa, whatever this is, it has to be natural law because it has math embedded in it. And anything that has natural law embedded in it is mathematical, like the Fibonacci sequence.
Mm.
So once I saw that, I said, well, I found something here. My next thought was, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have might be 7 level scales that had not been developed all the way because I wasn't developing anything. I was just hoping my clients are making notes. So knowing what I was looking for, I then inspected and studied all these other scales. And in a short period of time, each of them went to 7. And when it did, it manifested mathematically. So now I had 32 7-level scales each of which had mathematics embedded in it. Now, having gone to school for 28 years, I never saw anything like that. I said, this looks like a new subject to me, because I never saw anything like this anywhere. So then I thought, this could help people, because these are the data that people need in order to function, in order to live. So I'm going to have to write a book so people can have it. So the first draft was finished in December of 95. And I immediately sent it out in a transcript form to colleagues of mine, all of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects. And they all loved it. They had differing responses, but distinctly positive responses. When I saw that, that validated my belief about this, which is that I found something here that people would get. Now, I have to tell you, that was 30 years ago.
Yep.
In those 30 years, nobody has ever said to me, and believe me, I'm doing this on a daily basis, has ever said to me, I don't get this, that doesn't make any sense, or anything like that. That is not what they say. So a guy's in a bookstore. He sees this book on the shelf, Septemics. He says, what the hell is that? Takes it down, opens it up. Doesn't matter what chapter he opens it up to. He's going to look at it and he's going to say something like, oh, this makes sense. You know why he says that? It's natural law. So several people have said to me, what book is your book like? It's a reasonable question. And I have to tell them in all candor, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before, at least on Earth. But I can tell you this. Every one of these 35 skills is expressed in what you could call a table or a spreadsheet. And that table is very similar to the periodic table of elements. Now, remember the first time you saw the periodic table of elements? What
I
were you,
do.
12?
I do.
13, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You looked at it and you saw this big thing, you say, oh, this is interesting, you know? And the more you look at it, the more sense it makes.
Right.
The more you study it, the more you say, yes, this is cool. So before Dmitri Mendeleev invented the periodic table, there was chemistry, but he revolutionized it by making it easy to teach, easy to learn, and easy to understand. So now, all these years later, we have about 50 more elements, and we just keep fitting them in because it works. That's what this is like. It works. So after I had that experience with my colleagues liking this very much, I then spent the next 25 years writing the book, because I thought, this is big. This is a serious subject. And I have to realize, first I had to discover the phenomena, and I pretty much already explained to you how I did that.
Yeah, by actual doing. I mean,
Right. I
you were
just
in a lab every day in one form or another.
right. So, but as I said, I did find three more skills as I was writing the book. So then, once I had this data, I had to take it to and use it to craft a workable philosophic system. Now, as an engineer, like all engineers, I'm only interested in results and facts.
Mm-hmm.
To engineering, opinions and beliefs are utterly irrelevant. We don't even consider them.
Right.
We look at facts. That's what we do. We take known facts, okay? We know that this lot is a certain size, we measured it. That is a fact, you see? And we work from there. So it took 20 years to build this into something that would work all the time for every person. But the most time-consuming aspect of this was expressing it in a way that would make sense to the average reader, because my intent from the beginning was to give this to the people of Earth because it would help them. And believe me, it does, because people have been getting this for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
So their first reaction is they look at it and say, oh, yeah, this makes sense. But then as they actually study it and read it and use it,
You start applying it.
then the reaction is like, whoa, this is big. And that's actually one of the problems with this. This is so big that it exceeds the imagination of most people. So this is not only a life-changing book, but if it proliferates, it would be a world-changing book. So let me tell you the three ways in which this is beneficial to anyone who uses it.
Well,
Okay.
that was my next question is, how do we
Without getting
apply it?
into without getting into specifics.
Sure.
Each of these 35 scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or the beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves persons up the scale, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. So I'm giving you a yardstick by which to measure human affairs, which is an entirely new thing. And you have to realize there's 35 yardsticks.
Right.
So this situation might not resolve with using this yardstick, but you have 34 other yardsticks to use to measure it. Now, more importantly, just finding out what level you or another person is at on any scale is inherently enlightening and beneficial. So what will happen is when you spot a level correctly, you will have an insight, or you might want to call it a realization. So let's say you get this scale, like the scale of basic purposes, right? You think, oh, I wonder what my wife's basic purpose is, right? Well, you know her very well, and the book is extremely precise. So when you read it, she's at level 3. That explains A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K about my wife. And you will have a concatenation of insights about her that will continue to go on for days or weeks. Now you understand why 8 years ago she said that thing that you're still wondering about. And you have to realize that you can analyze her across all 35 scales. If you do that, you will understand her better than she understands herself. Because this is natural law. I just happened upon it and wrote it down. Now, the reason, as I explained, I happened upon it was because of the nature of my work. So I was bringing engineering principles, engineering tactics, engineering ideas, engineering devices, engineering measurements to human development.
Right. You see the world as a structure, and much like the periodic table, it's structurized, and then from there you can kind of manage and know, using the periodic table. I don't know. I'm not as familiar yet with, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about this.
Uh-huh.
And why don't you explain it to us about the levels and
Okay.
where that?
Okay. So I want to finish telling you the three ways in which this is valuable
Mhm.
to everyone. So I told you when you spot the level, you have an insight.
Right.
You just got smarter. That is exactly what happened with my clients for 40 years. Guy comes into me and says, Jim, I can't get along with my wife. She's a nice person and I love her, but we can't get along. I said, that's fine. So we get into the session. 20 minutes later, he says, I just realized she's like my mother. That explains. He has this big, and his relationship with her just got better
Mm.
because he understands her now. You can't get along with something if you don't understand it, like cats and dogs, right? Cats and dogs are different. Okay, if you've ever had a cat, if you've ever had a dog, that you can't treat them the same,
Right.
right? The cat has a litter box, the dog doesn't. The dog, you can say fetch, and he gets the newspaper. The cat won't fetch anything for you, right? Now, I love cats and dogs both, but they're different. And I get along with them well because I understand them. It's the
Right.
same thing with people. This guy's a cat and this guy's a dog. But obviously, it's much more sophisticated than that because 35 scales, 7 levels each, there's 245 different levels. Each one of these had to be discovered, verified, and then expressed in a way that would make sense to the average person. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Most scientific work is not expressed in a way that would make sense to the average reader. When Einstein told us about the theory of relativity in 1905 and then later in 1915, he wrote a paper which was for other mathematicians and physicists. If you weren't a mathematician or a physicist or both, you didn't understand it. He made no attempt to explain this to Dave Cheminsky, right? But I had a higher burden because my intent from day one was to give this to the people of Earth so they could use it to make their lives better. So that is not an easy thing to do, to take something that's based on math and express it. So I'll give you an example. The scale of sexuality, 7 levels of sexuality. Everybody's at one level or another. Level 2 is, if you look in the book, it says, take it or leave it. There are people whose mindset about sex is they can take it or leave it. In other words, if the girl says yes, that's good. If she says no, that's good too. They can take it or leave it. Most people never get to that level. It's at level 2. See, most people are at a lower level. Mm-hmm. So that's what I called it. Take it or leave it. Because people know what that means.
Right.
Now, I could have called it something more sophisticated than that, but what's the point of that? I'm here to help people. So I went out of my way to make this as simple and as clear as possible, which was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. This is a more than 86,000 word book. I literally went through the book word by word saying, is this the best word? Is this the clearest word? Is this expressing it in a way that people are going to get? And so there were at least a half a dozen rewrites of this book. And every time a version would come out, I would release it to clients and students and colleagues and such, and I'd get feedback. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, oh, okay, I can do this better. And I would rewrite it. Eventually, it got to a point where I said, this is obviously really clear to people. People get this. You don't have to be a college graduate to understand this because it's natural law. You don't have to be smart to understand the Pythagorean theorem. It's so clear. You look at it, the teacher explains it, you try, oh, now you've got it for life. It's the same thing here. So the next thing I should do really is tell you the names of the 35 scales so you'll know exactly what subject matter is addressed in the book.
Yeah, no, that's what looking at how do we apply it? How do we identify certain things?
Right. But before I do that, I want to say this third thing. Once you know the level, right? You look at it, you have it and say, Joe is at this level. See, it's like this little epiphany that you have. See? Then you can improve that person by moving them up one level at a time. This is more significant than it might sound because I have solved the gradient problem that has bedeviled mankind for at least 6,000 years. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. We all have problems and dilemmas and situations and difficulties we don't know how to resolve. More than 99% of the time, it's because we don't know the gradient. All good teachers, facilitators, therapists, coaches understand that human development must be done on a gradient. The good teachers and coaches and facilitators are the ones who do that, and their people come along because they're using a gradient. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I've worked as a physical trainer. Let's say a guy comes to me and says, Jim, I'm 50 pounds overweight. I can't fix this. Would you train me? Sure, I'll train you. So now I'm not going to just give this guy a 100-pound barbell and say, lift this. That's malpractice. I have to find the gradient. I don't know this guy's gradient yet. So I look at the guy, I talk to the guy, I make a guess. I say, okay, look, here's 15 pounds. Let's see if you can curl this, right? So I'm watching him curl it. I say, how you doing? He says, I could do this all day. Stop. I give him 20. Try it now. How you doing on this? Well, this is a little tough. I can do, I don't know, maybe 13, 14. Stop. I want you to do 13 reps every day, 3 sets, both arms, every day. And at the end of the week, I come back and I say, how are you doing with your curls? If he says, this is killing me, I'm sore, I say, that's fine. Just keep doing it. If he says, piece of cake, I can do more than this. And I say, fine, here's 25. See, that's finding the gradient.
Mhm.
Okay. We pay people to do this all the time for us, one way or another. I'm giving you the gradients. These 35 skills, each of it is a roadmap for success because I'm giving you the 7 levels from the bottom to the top across 35 axes on how to succeed. I'm giving you the gradients.
You're giving us the sauce, so you know how to make the sauce. You're giving us
Right.
the recipe to get to those next levels
That's right.
and what to identify.
Right. So let me tell you the names of the levels. Okay, the names of the scales, excuse me. So there are 24 individual scales and 11 group scales. The individual scales are the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales. The scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics.
Mm.
Any one of these 35 skills by itself could dramatically improve your life. And I'll give you an example. I mentioned the scale of motivation. One of the most important things that we have to know is motivation. Why is this guy doing this? We do this all the time, right? You're standing at the subway and a guy comes over to you and starts talking to you. You're thinking, what does this guy want? Does he want to borrow money? Does he want to know when the train comes? Does he want to know which train, where to change? You don't know, right? He has some motivation and you don't know what it is. And you're sort of trying to figure it out. So I've given you the 7 levels. Now you might say, well, there are thousands of possible motivations. They're just subsets of these. These are the 7 basic human motivations. And I've done the heavy lifting of figuring out what they are and getting them in the right sequence. So you can go up. You come to this level, you know what the next level up is, so you can improve yourself.
Well, so are these levels? It could be either stacked upon each other, or are they linear? Or you know, I mean, sort of like again, I'm going to just use what most people understand the periodic scale, right? So you have the basic, you know, hydrogen's number one, and then it goes up, but it goes up by heavy gases, light gases,
Right.
metals, and things like that. Do you have something like that when you're explaining your theories?
Yes. First of all, I have no theories. There are no
Oh,
theories.
right.
I'm explaining what I found. So, so every one of these 35 scales is expressed in a periodic table for the corresponding subject.
Right.
So the scale of reaction has a periodic table. And when you look at that period, I'm not just giving you the scale. That's not enough. I'm giving you all of the guts of the scale, the factors that contribute to it that make it inarguable. So you could take the scale of motivation and you could say, just using the book, gee, I wonder what my wife's motivation has told me. What's my mother's motivation told me? What's my boss's motivation told me? What's my girlfriend's motivation told me, right? And you could do this for every person you know or have ever known. Now, if you have enough data about the person, you'll get a correct answer. Ah, now I see my mother's at level 2 on the scale of motivation, and that explains why she does A, B, C, D, and E. Now you understand her better.
Hmm.
So you have a better relationship automatically without ever talking to her. Your relationship is better, just like understanding cats and dogs. If you give a kid a cat or a dog, he doesn't know that you have to treat the cat a certain way. It's not like a dog. Okay, that's how people are. So you could then reverse the vector and you could ask yourself, what's my motivation toward Joe? What's my motivation toward Mary? What's my motivation toward my pastor? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you could do this for everybody you know or have ever known. Now, by the time you finish this, you realize every time you get an answer, you're having an insight. Oh, yeah, that's why I can't get along with my pastor. I have this motivation, he doesn't. See? So by the time you finish this, depending on how many people you know or analyze, you're going to have something like 400 insights about all these people, which means your relationship with all these people has improved. Your understanding of them has improved. Your ability to navigate the relationship has improved. And your whole understanding of motivation has improved. So now when you see somebody, you know the scale, you can figure out their motivation pretty easily because there are only 7. And you just listen to the guy. Because I have to tell you, people tell you their levels. They tell you, comes right out of their mouths. If you shut up and listen, they will tell you the level.
Well, that's the trick is being able to be quiet enough to listen. I mean, that's the thing, how to identify with people differently. Like I mean, that's part of our growth to not always say everything that we think, but observe it in a way. And you're telling us not to observe it in a way of judgment, which many people do. Observe it as an observer, like you did.
Right.
Very clinical in this either happened or it didn't. This is
That's
not
right.
not why did it happen, but you can figure it out with some of
That's
the
right.
other criteria.
It is a fact that you, David, are at some level on each of these 35 scales.
Sure.
Now, if I spend enough time with you, I could find out which one you're on. I'm not going to tell you because that would be counterproductive. See, because it's an evaluation and this could be considered judgment. I'm going to let you find out for yourself.
Hmm.
Get the book and figure out where you are. It's not hard. The main problem as far as figuring this out is not knowing the person, not knowing the facts. And I'll give you an example. When Obama ran for president, I had no idea who he was. Most of us who were not from Illinois, which sent him to the Senate, had no idea who this guy was. He had only been in the Senate for 2 years. Who
Right.
is this guy with this funny name running for president? Right? So I conducted a septemic analysis of him. It took several weeks. And I listened to what he said. I went out of my way to watch his speeches, to watch his interviews, and I found his basic purpose. Now, what could possibly be more important to know about anyone than the person's basic purpose? Because that's what he's trying to do all the time.
Right.
When you, Dave, go to the scale of basic purposes and study it, you'll say, oh, I see what my basic purpose is. It's this. It's not this, 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 or this. It's this. And you will have all of these realizations about your life. That explains why I broke up with Gertrude when we went out in high school. So a lot of those things from your past just evanesce because you're not interested anymore because you solved it.
Right.
You're not going around saying, why did I break up with Gertrude? That doesn't happen. You
Right.
just say, oh, okay, I see, done. So one of the things I learned, which was tied in totally to my practice, is that these skills undercut depression and anxiety for very specific technical reasons, which I could explain to you if we had the time. So if you use this, whatever depression you might have is going to lessen. And whatever anxiety you might have is going to lessen. So that is a very valuable thing. So I have to tell you, when I was a young man, this data didn't exist. They hadn't figured it out yet. So I made the same stupid mistakes that everybody else makes. And
We didn't know what we didn't know,
that's
and
right.
yeah.
So I got involved with people I should have never been involved with. Now, when I look at that, Like there's a certain woman I was involved with, right? Now I see which level she was at. No wonder that was a train wreck.
But
She was at that level. Okay, so now I don't think about it anymore. See? So to me, now life is without drama because it's very easy for me to understand people. So this goes both ways. So, like, I met somebody when I first moved to Arizona, right? And I sat down and spoke with this person, and I could see right away this was an upscale person. This is before I had even published the book, but I had a lot of the data.
right, you
See?
already had the data you've been collecting, and not only collecting, but you've also then been sharing it with people to kind of put the test out to
That's right.
get that feedback.
So I could see right away the first day, this was an upscale person. One way or another, this person will be valuable to me. And I went out of my way to keep that person in my life, and I was dead right. Okay. Now, the opposite happens. Sometimes I meet a person, I can see this person is at or near the bottom of a scale, right? Whoa. Adolf Hitler was at level 7 on the scale of basic purposes. See, if the people of Germany knew that, the Nazis never would have come to power if they had this book. They would have said, this guy's a nutcase. He's at level 7. We're not voting for these people. The Nazis got 37% in the election of 1933. They never would have gotten that if people knew this. They would have gotten maybe 20%. You know who would have comprised the 20%? Sociopaths, psychopaths, professional criminals, insane people, mentally retarded people, et cetera, et cetera. You have a question?
Yeah. So one of the questions is, so can I be, obviously I'm not 35 on all levels, but could I be low on, and I probably am, low on one level, but extremely higher on another, right?
Absolutely.
Right, because those are level. I know you're calling them levels, but they're sort of characteristics, right?
Yeah.
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 And some things we're strong in, and but it really sounds like something that's very dynamic, science based, and like it would be good for everybody, right? If you're hiring somebody, hey,
Right.
you ask the appropriate questions, and then you sort of know, again, like you said, if they prior to the election of 1933, we could have had the world could have been differently.
That's right. So let me give you a little analogy, okay, to sort of understand how this works. So let's say you're dating some girl for 3 years and you're thinking about getting married. That's a big step. Would it make sense to ask yourself, why does this woman want to marry me?
Mhm.
I'm not saying to ask her. I'm saying open the book. There's only 7 levels. It's not a hard choice because you know her because you've been hanging around with her for 3 years, right?
Mhm.
These levels are specifically detailed. I say at this level, the person does X, Y, and Z. At this level, the person does A, B, and C. So you open it and you say, oh, I see why she wants to marry me. She loves me. That's level 1 on the scale of motivations, the highest motivation of all. Let's set the date. Maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe what happens is you say, now that I thought about this for a while, I think she wants to marry me because I drive a Lamborghini. I have a 60-foot yacht. I fly my own Learjet. I live in a $10 million condo and I have $5 million in the bank. See, that's a different motivation. That's level 4 money. I'm not saying it's good or it's bad, and I'm not telling you what to do. But when you have it, you'll say, now
Right.
I
Uh,
understand.
Much like I tell my kids, right? And I know you shared that you have a son at least. When when they were teenagers, Dad, can I go to the party? Yes, give me more information. Our parents going to be there, and all those other things. At the beginning, I fell into the trap. Hey, Dad, can this happen? Yeah, sure. And then there was so many times that I was driving around Long Island, dropping everybody off. Can you drop off my friend? And then three other people got in the car, and this one lives here, this one is staying here and there, and I'd spend the rest of my night driving until I
Uh-huh.
learned the fact of ask the better questions.
Right.
And with those answers, you could still make the decision, but you at least understand what you're doing, what you're committing yourself to.
Right. So You have this realization that this woman wants to marry you for your money. Now, what you do about that is up to you. That's none of my business. So you might say, well, okay, this is not the first woman who wanted to marry me for my money, but this one is pretty, congenial, funny, witty, easy to get along with, polite. So I'm going to marry her anyway. And you might live happily ever after. That does happen.
Mhm.
But maybe you're the type of person who says, I don't want to marry somebody who wants to marry me for my money. I want to marry somebody who loves me for myself, Dave. See? And you break up. Now, don't think in that case you're going to be upset. You're not. You're going to be relieved. You're going to say, thank God I figured this out now before I wound up owing her $15,000 a month in alimony. So now you go looking elsewhere, other women, right? And now you're a little smarter. Maybe you don't mention that you drive a Maserati
Right.
because you want to see what she thinks of you, right? See? So you are now empowered to do better. Not only did you save yourself a train wreck, you're smarter now going forward. Now, let's say you own an automobile dealership and you need a new salesman. Well, you interview people, right? Now, you know the scale, right? Because you've been studying it. And it comes out of this guy's mouth that he's a money motivated person, right? There are people who are money motivated
Sure,
persons.
of course.
Right. So you say, this is like the guy. Great, hire him. That's what you want. Now realize, same scale, same level, different result. If a guy's going to work selling cars for you, you want him to be money motivated.
Right.
But for a woman you're going to make love to, no, you don't want that. See, this is all hypothetical. I'm just saying, this is how you use it. It's very easy to use. This is not
So,
complicated once you know the material.
yeah. So how do we get the material? So that's the question, because I know we're gonna be wrapping up soon, but so I'd love everybody to know how they can contact you, but also get the material. I think, not I think, I know that all of this information would be helpful for me. It would have helped me probably a bunch of times in my life.
Mhm. I invite your listeners to my website, which is septemics.com, Septemics, where you can see what many readers have said about it, what many journalists have written about it, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself, and there's even a pre-recorded audio entitled Introduction to Septemics that you can listen to that explains it in 15 minutes to a new person.
All right, well, we're definitely gonna look into this. I hadn't had time to fully look into it, and I wanted to learn it in a way that you could explain it to us, and you've explained it really well, and it really does apply to everybody else.
Yes, I will say if you want to improve yourself or others or both, and you can read English, this book is for you.
There you go.
Now, many people make the mistake of thinking that everybody wants to improve themselves and others, and that's not true.
Correct.
There are all kinds of categories of people who do not want to improve themselves: sociopaths and psychopaths and professional criminals and corrupt politicians and serial murderers and mentally retarded people.
Right, and some people who just are unaware, right?
Right,
They think that they're fine, or because of their limiting beliefs, they just really believe that this is as good as it gets, whatever it is. I'm a pebble counter, and that's all I'm supposed to be because my father and my grandfather and so on were pebble counters.
right,
And that's, until they're ready to look at another level or meet somebody like yourself to then just give them through conversation the ability to see that there's, more ways to do that than
right. So I'm absolutely sure, knowing you from just this hour that we've been speaking, you would love this book.
yeah, I'm gonna check
Deep
it out.
dive right into it. Now, if I meet somebody who's a drug dealer and an alcoholic, is he going to read this book? No. If he did, he wouldn't understand it.
Right.
And even if he did understand, he wouldn't apply it because it's contrary to his way of life. He's trying to clean out your bank account and take your wife. That's not about improving people. My whole life has been about improving people, and I'm giving this to people. It's a way to do that. All you need is the damn book. Once you have the book, you don't need anything else. You don't need to join a club. You don't need to join a religion. You don't need to go to school. You don't need to hire a facilitator. It's just you and the book. The only thing you might need is a dictionary, but I would say that for every book on earth.
Yeah, right. There's always a book, especially a detailed book that's well written. You have opportunities to learn new words
Right.
and take you to another level.
But I tell you, there's not only is there a glossary in front of every chapter, there's even one in front of the introduction. So I'm giving you the definitions with precision. It's this specific definition. So you say, okay, that's what he means by control, and then you read the scale of control. You know what I'm talking about. There's no ambiguity here. Uh, Engineers loathe ambiguity. We don't
Right.
tolerate ambiguity.
Correct.
So I want to invite you people to check this out. If you check out the website, you're probably going to want to buy the book. It's available hardbound, softbound, and ebook.
There you go. Can't beat that. Can't even stop you from. It doesn't matter how you want to read it. You'll get that information as long as you put the effort in. All right. Well, thank you, Jim, so much for all this. This is so educating. I can't wait to learn a little bit more about it, and I might reach out to you a little bit more because I'd love to hear. And I know this was just a scratch of the surface of the power that you brought to the world.
Yes. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Also, I hope you had, well, not I hope, I know you did. You learned something really interesting and to move forward. And I hope you go to Jim's website and I'll put it in the notes. And for everybody else, I wish you peace and love as always, because that's, one of our foundations. And I'll find out what level that belongs on. But also, when you bring a bat, remember, bring awesome thoughts and always be yourself. Be authentic today and get your sweet spot. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Now I have to tell you something now that we're done.